Hello everyone and welcome back to the Survivor Start channel. Today we have a little bit of a different type of video. Today I think we need to analyze the game of the youngest player in Survivor history, that is Will Wall from Millennials vs. Gen X. And I think his game really points out a lot about if you're going on Survivor, especially as a young player, there are certain things you need to avoid and there's some things you need to do and focus on to make sure you have a serious shot of winning the game. So, to go into Will's game, let's think here. So, of course, you have the Millennials versus Gen X split. And fun fact, he's a Gen Z. I didn't realize this at the time. I didn't know the years. I was like, he's Gen Z, but he's on the Millennials tribe. That's hilarious. Regardless. And he gets on a tribe, and he doesn't connect that well with enough people, I don't think. Yes, he was very tight with Jay, obviously, and he did have good connections with Michelle. But people like Figgy, people like Taylor, and I wouldn't even really say he had one with Michaela. I think that was more of a Jay connection, that Will kind of was just like a mutual friend, for lack of a better term there. And what does he do for Will? Well, Will didn't really have much agency at all in that first tribe. He didn't really need it, but he was kind of playing very passive. So eventually, obviously, there's the swamp where there's a couple Gen Xers, I think Brett and Sunday maybe, on a tribe with Jay, Hannah, Michaela, and Will. And Will, following Jay, votes out Michaela in a crazy blindside, one of the craziest blindsides of all time, with that reaction of Michaela. Amazing character in the show. What a cast. What a casting. And then that leads them pretty soon to the merge. And in the merge, Will is not seen as much of a factor. Will ultimately, kind of is like floating a little bit between the two. He's seen as like kind of just like an ally of Jay and kind of just an extension of Jay and like something to go after to kind of like hurt Jay's game a little bit. And so you do that. Will is kind of like there's a split in power. Like I think it's 5 one side, 5 the other, or it's something really even. Will is the swing vote because Will all of a sudden goes, I need to make a big move, and he votes out Zeke in this big move. And then his story soon ends right after, as he's voted out immediately after, I believe, 30 minutes into a two boot episode. So that's Will's story. So what can we learn from this, and what can we take from this? Because I think it's if you're going into the game, especially as someone that's young, there's a lot to take from his gameplay. I think the first thing is that introductory tribe, how you behave on a tribe like that. And so here you see Will is not have a lot of bonds. He's kind of just playing very passive. This is a really bad play, I think, for young players, because once you get behind the 8 ball, Shadow Harvey Specter, you ain't gonna get in front. I haven't even watched that show, I just know that's it. Yeah, so you set up these passes, but you have no control. And therefore, going forward, as someone that's young, you're already at a disadvantage. People are going to view you as inexperienced, as immature. It's kind of just how it's going to be. It sounds cliche, but it is very true. I think we see it time and time again. That's why people lie about their age when they're like those 18, 19, 20, 21. Around that age. You got to be able to look the part to say you're lie about your age. So yeah, not everyone can do that, but I think it's an interesting strategy to kind of adapt. Will cannot do that. He was a high school student. He had to claim he was 18, and people are not going to respect him as much as someone that's like 28, 33, somewhere just around that range, or even someone for Gen Xers. They're all adults. You think they're going to listen to an 18-year-old kid? Rough spot to be in. So that's why you're going to build some good bonds early, I think, because you have to find the medium. You can't be really passive like Will did, because he was just left behind when he decides, oh, I got to make a big move. Well, it's a stupid move that doesn't do anything for him. He gets him voted out. And people are just like, let's just get him out, because it's a blatant big move. You can't make blatant big moves that don't accomplish much for your game. We'll get to that in a second. But you also, at this game, you play too passive, but you can't be too aggressive. And I think Will was more focused on that part of it, that he didn't realize he was being too passive and wasn't didn't have enough aggression to, set himself up for long term strategically. And then I think we have to look at, so we didn't have good bonds. He didn't have strategic agency because he didn't have it. He didn't do a good job at stating himself and ingraining himself as a strategic asset player, someone that can help make some moves going forward and be a mastermind of some things. And you get to the Michaela blindside. I think this is still a mistake. As cool as the moment was, I really don't understand it too much from Jay. And Will, I think, kind of just lets Jay do Jay, because Jay is like the bigger strategic threat of the two. He makes more of the calls. We see it there. And Will kind of just lets it happen. And I don't know how on board Will was with it, if he was just willing to go with Jay, because he trusted Jay and he didn't want to hurt that tie at all. But getting out Michaela, she wanted to work with you specific millennials to go far in the game. So she was so loyal to you, it seemed. And she's a big target because of just how she is and how strategic people see that she is. Because you saw it, other people are going to see that as well. And you get rid of that, you got to be thinking, I got to make plays for me. I can't worry about upsetting people a little bit. Will, once again, I think too passive as a young player. You don't want to be the highlight, but you're too passive, and therefore you set yourself up with a hand that, yeah, you can play strategic going forward, but if you don't have the cards in hand to make good plays, you're never going to make it to the end and win the game. So, mistake there, I think, getting out Michaela. So you got to think, as a young player, make moves that help me have the assets I need to go forward in this game. Instead of just worrying about what upsets people now, you have to look long term. At the end of the day, yeah, you don't want to get too far ahead, but you have to look long term, because it is a game where, depending on who you're sitting at the end with, it limits or greatly increases your chances of winning. So then we get to the merge. And Will, once again, not too much of a thing. And then Will decides, yeah, I haven't really done much. I've played too passive. Will, it's a little too late, because he decides to make some big move. When everyone's calling it Will's big move, and everyone knows Will's a swing vote, and they're describing it as, everyone's like acknowledging it as a big move. It's really not. He turns on Zeke. He's like the swing vote in that scenario. What does that do for him strategically? I don't know. It was a big move for the sake of making a big move. That's one of my least favorite things to see in Survivor. So I think as a young player, you may get caught up in, I need to build a resume, let me make a big move. Well, no. That's not the type of move you make. You make a move that strategically sets you up and is not just like a public showboating type move. It's more silent. It's more behind the scenes that sets yourself up with a path and tells a strategic story to the jury in that final tribal council. Because as a young player like Will, 18 years old, it's going to be hard. The jury's not going to, I think, be as inclined to vote for you. You have a lot of time to make money and kind of just grow as a person. And another thing I would say is that they don't view you as convincing as like a speaker, and they don't take you as with much respect as they would someone that's older. So it's important to build these moves that tell a strategic story, that show how I did this to get to here, this eventually led to that, and that put me in this spot where I could do this to make it to the end and to get that person out, blah, 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 blah. And you don't have that with that type of move of turning on Zeke. It's a big move for the sake of being a big move. Not a good play. So I think if you really want to succeed as a young player, you have to be, I think it's important to kind of find the medium between overly strategic and more passive, but you can get away with it depending on the player you are. I think if you're older, you see like Tony, strategic mastermind the whole time, able to get to the end. Passive players like Kenzie, able to win the game. I think that comes with her being able to build these better relationships because she's a bit of an older person, and more people can respect that, as opposed to Will, who passively not going to get a lot of respect, and you can't showboat too much as a young player. It never works. We have Fabio. He was able to win a season as the youngest player ever. Kind of just out of some crazy luck and winning some challenges, which takes skill, but strategically was not there. I think we can all admit it. So that is going to do this one here. Let me know what you think. What does it take for a player to succeed when they are young, like Will's age? I think you're fighting an uphill battle, so let me know what you think. What is the key to success? So I hope you have a nice morning, afternoon, or night, wherever you are right now. Peace.